These are 6 things you should be charging for as an influencer or a content creator. And if you're not already charging for these, then you're most likely leaving a lot of money on the table, and I'm here to fix that. The first thing you want to charge for is the very obvious one, content creation, right? Which is the cost of creating the content. I have a video on setting your rates as an influencer or a creator. So if you haven't watched that yet, I'm going to leave it linked in the description box for you. But that video essentially walks you through my thought process for setting rates, because at the beginning, something I struggled with a lot was figuring out how much to charge brands. I had to ask myself some questions, and that formula is what I now use to figure out what to charge, even when I'm about to revise my fees or my costs. So if you haven't watched that video yet, I'm going to leave it linked in the description box. That's a very important video that you need to watch if you are struggling with fixing rates or knowing what to charge brands. Now, that video doesn't take into account other things that happen during the course of content creation, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. So like I said, the first is the very obvious content creation. That video sorts it out, and you should be charging for that. Second is usage rights. Now, you might be asking, what are usage rights? Usage rights is practically rights given to a brand or a business to use your piece of content. There are 2 types of usage rights. You have organic usage rights and you have paid usage rights. Now, under paid usage rights, there are some subcategories, but the 2 main categories or types are organic and paid usage rights. Organic usage rights means that the brand can use your content organically on their platforms. So there's no paid dollar behind those pieces of content that you have created and given to them. So they can post organically on their Instagram, on their Facebook, on their TikTok, on their Snapchat, whatever you agree on with them. You need to agree on the platforms, and then they can post organically on those platforms. So that's for organic usage rights. Paid usage rights means that they can use the content that you have created and given to them for ads, whether it's online ads or offline ads, which is why I said paid usage rights has some subcategories underneath. If they are going to use your picture post, for instance, on a billboard, then you need to charge for that, separate from what you have charged for creating the content. If the content originally was, for instance, for Instagram and Facebook, right? If they come back and say that they want to use it for billboards, then you need to be paid separately for that. That falls under paid usage rights. If they decide that they want to use it in their marketing emails, that's paid usage rights, because that's not what you created that piece of content for. If they decide that they want to use it for Facebook and Instagram ads, they need to pay you for that. So all of those things come under paid usage rights. Now, some people do not charge for organic usage rights. I am one of such people, especially when it comes to like small and growing businesses here in my country, right? So I usually will give complimentary organic usage rights, but I keep a time frame, and that's also something very important that you want to take note of. You do not want to give perpetual usage rights. I'm probably going to talk about this in another video, because that means that a brand or business can use your content forever. So when you are giving usage rights, please put a fixed period, and if the brand wants extended time, they can come back to you and you can renegotiate and extend usage rights if you want to. Now, ideally, the charge for paid usage rights will be higher than that for organic usage rights, because for organic usage rights, they are posting it on their platform, but for paid usage rights, they are boosting it to more people and they are going to make more money off your content. So you definitely should be charging for paid usage rights. The third thing that you absolutely should be charging for is exclusivity. And exclusivity means that when you're working with one brand, you can't work with other competing brands. Now, I'm going to say here, very importantly, when signing a contract with a brand, make sure they list who their competitors are, okay? So that everyone knows for a fact they're not supposed to work with this brand, okay? Maybe the brand can say 3 weeks before you post our content and after you post our content, we do not want you working with any competing brand. Or 6 months from when you post our content, we don't want you working with any competing brand. Now, when they say that, or when a brand tells you that, it means that they are taking money off your plate. Because if they do not want you to work with any other brand, then that's potential income being left on the table, and you need to charge for that. Now, you typically will charge for that based on the duration. Now, something else you definitely want to be charging for is whitelisting. Now, whitelisting is essentially allowing brands run ads through your account. If you have maybe like a Facebook Business Manager account, you may need to grant access to a brand rep to run the ads from the back end through your account. So when the ads are running, instead of seeing the brand's profile, they would see your profile. Brands do that because it feels more organic, right, to the audience than seeing an ad from an actual brand that makes it look like an actual ad, right? So if a brand has come to you to ask you to sponsor content, you definitely want to be charging for that. Now, something that is often overlooked and sometimes snuck into our timeline that you need to be charging for is a rush fee, okay? A brand's lack of preparedness shouldn't be your headache, all right? So if a brand, is planning for Mother's Day, for instance, and they are coming to you 3 days before Mother's Day and wanted to shoot a video and edit and send to them and have it ready to go up on Mother's Day, then that's an unusually quick timeline. For me, at least, if it's okay for you, then that's fine. But if that's putting you under some pressure, right, or if that is lower than your usual turnaround time, then you want to charge a rush fee for that. Yes, you can. Because what that means is that you're going to have to let go of other tasks that you might have had planned to accommodate that brand's content, and you have to speed things up and probably work overtime. You need to charge for that, okay? And that is often called a rush fee. But make sure that when you are coming up with the cost for these things, the costs are reasonable. Not a brand can kick back on it. So if a brand is asking you to deliver a piece of content or pieces of content at a ridiculously short or within a ridiculously short time frame, then you can charge for a rush fee, because like I said, you're going to have to let go of certain tasks and responsibilities just to accommodate the brand's needs. So don't be afraid to charge for that. Now, something that you definitely want to be charging for is a reshoot, especially if it's not your fault. Now, before you charge for a reshoot, make sure you have covered your bases. For instance, I like to send a concept document to a brand that must be approved before I start creating the content. So for instance, if I'm creating video content, I typically would send a script, just for the brand to have an idea of what's going to be said or the scenes in the video. If I'm creating photo content, I typically would send a mood board just to give the brand an idea of what the pictures can look like. When I have now created the content, after we have approved the concept document, and you now decide that you no longer want that style of content and you want something else, you need to pay for that, okay? Because you need to compensate me for the work that has already been done and the inconvenience of having to reshoot the content. Like I said, especially if it wasn't your fault and it's the fault of the brand rep or the agency rep or whoever is in contact with you. Make sure you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's before you ask for a reshoot fee, because if you are being asked to reshoot because you do not adhere to the content brief, for instance, then you have no business asking for a reshoot fee. But if it was absolutely not your fault, you've covered your bases and the brand has asked that you reshoot, then you absolutely should charge a reshoot fee. I wish I knew this in 2020 when a brand asked me to film another piece of content after I had shared the concept with them. So this is like a lesson to myself as well. But make sure you are charging for a reshoot if the brand is asking you to reshoot, even after you have crossed your T's and dotted your I's. Hopefully with these tips, you're no longer leaving money on the table, you're enjoying your work and being properly compensated as a creator, and you are running a profitable content creation or influencer business. I would see you in my next video. Again, if you haven't watched the video on how to set your rates as an influencer or a creator, I'm going to leave it linked in the description box, and I'll see you in that video.